Welcome to Your Spiritual Besties Podcast. I'm Lauren Ledoux.
And I'm Rashida McCoy. We're here to laugh, cry, learn, and connect with you.
We discuss anything and everything from our everyday lives to the magical, mystical, and woo-woo.
So take a deep breath, grab a cup of tea,
and set an intention to receive, because you deserve it, bestie. I'm doing well. I'm currently in Florida with my entire family. So like my side of the family, I think there are 14 or 15 of us all in this house together.
I am just putting myself in my family's shoes. It would be interesting for 14 of us to be in all the same. But that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
You don't get to see this part of your family, right?
I mean, I do. They live all fairly close to me, but we don't get to like all be together that often. And Gemma is just in total heaven right now with cousins all around and like ice cream and donuts galore. Like all the things that we'd never have are just readily available to her right now via my parents. So yeah, life is good. Life is good. But I'm barricaded in my room and just hoping nobody busts in.
Well, it's life and you know how we roll with it. Life happens as we do everything. So if Gemma or whomever come in, we'll just take a beat and get back to it. But I'm so excited for you and happy for you. It's the beach, right?
Yeah. We're right on the water and there's sand everywhere.
That's the thing about the beach. You love it, but then you're just like, oh man, especially with the littles too. It like gets in their diapers and their, bottoms and all the things. And you're like, man, I didn't know sand could get in these places, but they're fine. So we'll be fine. That's what brooms and showers are for, I think.
Oh yeah, it's all good. Dirty kids are happy kids.
Yes. Awesome. Well, what's going on today, Lauren? What do we got planned for today? I'm excited.
I'm so excited too. We love bringing guests on the podcast, but we're especially excited for today because
So excited.
this is one of our teachers.
Ooh.
So today we are bringing on Nikki Novo, and Nikki is a Cuban-American best-selling author and spiritual thought leader dedicated to empowering people to connect with their intuition so they can cultivate self-trust and bravery. She has been featured in Oprah Daily, Telemundo, and Well and Good, as well as podcasts like Almost 30, Balance Blonde, The Highest Self podcast, and naturally Your Spiritual Besties podcast. And Nikki lives in Western North Carolina with her husband, 3 children, and a copious amount of farm animals. So it sounds like we're all well accustomed to chaos. Welcome, Nikki.
Yeah.
Oh
Welcome.
my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so I feel very blessed to be here with both of you and to get to spend time with all of you. So yes, chaos it is. 3 kids, tons of animals. I mean, all of it.
Well, we are so excited.
Oh,
go ahead,
Rashida. No, I was going to say tons. I was like, yeah, I only have the chickens, Nikki. What do you have?
Oh, you have chickens. Okay, we have we have rabbits. We have chickens, tons of chickens. And my husband, you see all those things on TikTok about like you think your wife is into shoes, like wait until she gets into chickens. Like I need that for my husband. Like this guy has like a chicken problem. He even like grows his own chickens in like a incubator. He actually incubates eggs. And then he gives birth to them and he really feels like he gave birth to them. And the last time he birthed like 22 chickens. He's like, "Man, it was really hard work." I'm like, "Oh yeah, those eggs outside of your body, like that was hard work for." He's like, "Yeah." So he has a chicken problem, but he's funny because he like trades them with other people for other animals and other things like that. So we have a ton of different types of chickens, and they're super fun. We have goats, like
Ooh.
baby. We have a couple babies right now. Also, we did have a pig who we loved so much, but pigs are really hard to keep them healthy because they have a lot of like stomach issues, and she passed away from a stomach problem. And then we have our domestic animals, which is we have a dog in the house and a cat in the house. So it's all sorts, but obviously the farm animals live in the barn. and we go to visit them. And Benny, my husband, is really more of like the main caretaker of those animals. And I guess I take care of the animals inside the house. That's my
Well,
domain.
I like the splitting duties. That's good. Those are his
Yeah,
babies, and you have your babies and also children inside too.
exactly. Exactly. So it's tons
Well,
of
thank you
fun.
for sharing that. We are so excited to have you here and let us get a little peek into your world. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, we love to ask everyone first, Nikki. We're definitely interested to hear what you have to say. What does spirituality mean to you?
Ah, I find spirituality to be a love affair with the divine. I think that,
Mm.
so I grew up Catholic and went to Catholic school my whole life. My parents are Cuban, so it's a big part of like the Latin culture. And I remember just like being in school and like we would go to church on Fridays and just feeling so far away from the actual action, which is like on the altar. And then even when they give you the Eucharist, like they hide it in this like little closet and you just feel so distant. And then you have to go through this like male priest to be able to even get closer. And it just felt very distant to me always. So I actually, because I have questioned why I have, gone through so many different studies of spirituality and like different religions, and I've always wondered like where did my interests come from? And I came to the answer that I have always wanted to like touch, like taste, feel the divine. And I think that is why many of us seek spirituality, because we're actually trying to get closer to that love that we know exists. And there are just so many different routes there. Even there's great religions that like there's religions that can get you there. There's practices, all that kind of stuff. I think you have to find obviously like the one that's right for you or mix the ones that feel the best for you. But I think for me at least it is the practice also of my love, and it's like my love and affinity for like my beloved, which is the divine. And spirituality is the meeting. It's like when I get to experience it, be with it, connect with it, know it. So it's like a love affair to me.
That is so beautiful. I love that. Like taking that in. It's very romantic and just like inspiring. And it's like I know spirituality is like personal, but like the way you described it, it's like very like deep and personal. So thank you for sharing that, Nikki.
Yeah, I've thought about this. So Rashida, I feel like I didn't know you guys asked this question, but it is something because I wondered like it's funny. I went to Catholic school my whole life until high school, and then I went to a state university. So the first time not in a Catholic school, and it was just so interesting how the first like you get a few electives the first semester. You don't get too much leeway, but the first time that I was like able to take some electives, like the first thing I was looking for was like world religions. And I was looking for I was like, give me the religion class, because I had been taking a religion class my whole life. And I was still seeking it. And I was like, okay, Nikki, you have all this freedom. You don't have to do this church thing anymore. You don't have to do the Bible study anymore, but you're still like, what is happening? Like, and,
What is it?
and I think even today I get that question a lot because I teach, spirit guides, I teach higher self, I teach all sorts of things. And a lot of my Catholic friends are a little weary about what I'm doing. And they wonder, and even my mother has a really big problem with what I do. That's for another episode. But they kind of think that I am pulling away from my religion. And I actually feel that if anything, I am like pursuing the divine. There's many different routes. I mean, I've studied everything from, you know, um, the Kabbalah. I've studied like, obviously lots of like Hindu roots and even like my most recent, because I'm Cuban and there's a lot of African derived religions that go through Cuba. And I have, nobody in my family wants to tell me about this because they only want to tell me about the Catholicism, but I have those roots in my family. So I recently started to study that about a year ago. And I'm just, there's every, and I actually I on Sundays go to church. Like on Sundays, I still go to it's I mean, it's nothing like the Catholic Church. It's actually really fun. And I just hang out with Jesus. So like I think if anything, all these different routes I take are out of like my pursuit and my love for the divine. So I think, if anybody is ever worried about why are they even like seeking spirituality, I think we're just seeking home and we're trying to
Mm.
find like which is the best route to home. And you want to go home a lot and maybe you don't want to always take the same route. So you take a few different ways of going home. And I think that that is these different pursuits of like, and I've been doing it so long that I have learned that, some years I love this road and I'll take that road 20 times in 2 years. And then later I discover another road and I go there, but it all leads me to the same place. It all leads me home.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think for anyone who follows like any religious dogma, it's really scary to see somebody step outside of the rules and like the box that it puts you in because it is that, I suppose, like proven path to the divine. But we're so lucky, to live in a time and in a place where we can explore so many different routes and we have access to that information and we're able to just follow our hearts and intuition and joy to find home. And I see more and more people like breaking out of their background and tradition and opening it up. And I love too that you're exploring like your actual ancestry and their practices and finding home in that way. Rashida and I both have kind of similar stories where we came from different religious backgrounds and then carved our own path. And there is like just a tremendous amount of joy in it. And then also it can be a little bit scary every once in a while. I think you're at a point, Nikki, probably where you've been doing this long enough where everyone's just kind of used to it. I'm kind of in the same spot, although every once in a while I'm still like, oh my God, my extended family like probably thinks I'm a witch and burning in hell and that I'm crazy. But like I'm I'm not. I know I'm not, and I know it's in my heart. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. So Rashida and I both went through your soul reading method program and loved it so much. uh, and we actually do readings on our podcast, and it
Oh
is
my
just so much
gosh, how
fun. Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
It's so fun.
it's so much
We
fun.
do
We
it
both have
together,
like
so
we yeah. We do it together and we each kind of have our own flavor and method and specialties. I'd love to know, like, how did you how did you make the leap from, this religious background to like maybe opening up a little bit to like really realizing your intuition and then wielding it for service?
Yeah, I love that you guys are doing that. I love that, it's so funny because there was a time where when I was being called to do readings, it sounded like the scariest thing, like the most ridiculous thing that I could possibly do, um, would be to do these readings that I was, like, being called to, and to see that you guys are now doing the readings, having fun with it, just makes all that scary stuff worth it. I think we're always in front of these like scary leaps. And that's why I love bravery so much. Like bravery is like one of the things I work with a lot, really trying to be brave. And it's like you make a brave move and you never know what's going to come of it. It's kind of like a sacrifice almost like, and to see that like that sacrifice of my ego self, what people were going to think of me, like has brought this has given me this joy to see that you guys are having fun with this thing that I thought was really fun. I think readings, believe it or not, I find them going back to like that question about spirituality and why I felt so disconnected in my religion was because I wanted to like touch it. It's like I wanted to like practice it.
Mhm.
And I really do feel like readings, specifically the ones that we do, the soul readings, are the practice of your spirituality in many ways because like spirituality, we're trying to like connect with the soul, connect with the divine and the soul readings are giving us time to be together as souls. So, like, you're working from your highest self, you're reading the other person's like soul and their highest self. So, you are in essence like being your spiritual selves, being your spiritual beings. And it's such a gift. So it's like you get to actually not only like think about spirituality or read texts about it or hear Jesus talk or whatever, you actually like get to get involved and get engaged when you're doing something like a reading. So I know it looks like very witchy, but I actually see it as like a practice of, rather than like watching the teacher teach, like you're actually in the, your hands are in the dirt doing the things. And that's what I love about readings. But anyways, I know that doesn't answer your question, but the way that I actually got into the way I made that leap. So I was a fashion and beauty editor. Before that, I was a publicist in LA working for the film industry. So I've had a very, glitz and glamour kind of bougie background. And how did I like leap into this like very weirdo, kind of area of work? And that happened in, it was around, so I would say like I've always had very strong intuition. I think probably both of you have felt the same way. I would have never called it that. I never used the word intuition. I think I described it more as like, it's always been very hard for me to go against my heart. Like, unfortunately, I'm not somebody who I wish I could be somebody that could fake it, and like kind of just like do things that are more acceptable and all that. But my insides are so annoyingly loud that I can not stay off path too long, which is really annoying. Like there's been many times that I'm like, God damn it. Like, why couldn't I just, my brothers are doctors, your wives are doctors, my dad's a doctor. I'm like, couldn't I just get my head down and like done that thing? It would have been so much easier. Would have married one of my brother's friends. Like, what is wrong with you, Nikki? Like you complicate things. But I really have never been able to do something against my heart is kind of like the way that I would describe it. So I always lived life that way. Not to say that I have been off path many times, but what I'm trying to say is like, I can't stay off my soul's true path too long. And
Mhm.
I always use my intuition to get back on path. So I've had, I was engaged very young. I knew that wasn't the right thing for myself. I broke off the wedding 2 months before. Like, so I've made so many of these like decisions that have been hard and have been brave and brought me back on path, which is actually what my new book is about. And that feeling of getting back on path had always been possible through my intuition, which again, I would probably maybe call it my heart or my gut at the time. But one time in my mid 20s, that intuition was really challenged. So for the first time, I made what I thought was a heart, a soul led decision, a heart led decision. And it just blew up in my face and I was very confused. So the decision was I was living in Miami where I'm from, and I, met this guy, fell in love with him, was with him for, a couple years and really thought that like I really truly felt like spirit was telling me like this is your person. And not in a like pushing it or making it that way. Like I really felt like this is like my soulmate. And out of nowhere, um, he breaks up with me, right? And I know that we've all had those experiences, and I maybe I'm making it sound more dramatic, but it was like it wasn't so much that I was yes so heartbroken, but what was hardest for me was that my intuition was felt broken, and I
Mm.
could not understand what was happening. So I don't know if you guys have ever had that situation where you like make a decision that you really felt guided to, and then it doesn't work out. It's very confusing. I think that breaking our intuition is like one of the most like traumatic things we can experience because it is our inner compass. Like if we lose that
Yeah.
center, and sometimes it's situations like this one that I'm telling you that it was like a one-time kind of crisis, but then also, you're in relationships sometimes that you're being gaslit the whole time. And what that relationship does, or, you're with a narcissist or whatever. And what that relationship does is it removes your intuition, which is super damaging, especially to a woman, because I think we're so guided by our intuition. So I was like very pushed off center because of that. And I didn't know, like, I just remember kind of being like, again, I wouldn't even have called it intuition, but I remember being like, I need an expert with like this problem. And in my mind, I was like, I need a psychic. Like, I need a psychic who's going to kind of explain to me like what just happened. I need, and, and I grew up Catholic. Was not allowed to go to psychic because it was a big no-no, but I had to, like, I was like pursuing. So I had this like one girlfriend that was definitely more rebellious than like my other Catholic girlfriends. And she's like, yeah, I know a psychic. It's like she knew like the drug dealer in town, it's like, she's like, of course I knew some psychics. I was like, perfect. She's like the girl that like knows a guy that knows a guy that knows a guy, type of thing. So if you need something like a hitman or something, you call this
That's
friend.
her.
And but this time I just needed a psychic. So we went on a couple psychic runs and they were hilarious and awful and scary and all these funny things until one day we had a very serendipitous moment where we were talking about her and another friend of mine. We were all sitting out in Lincoln Road, which if you've ever been to Miami, it's like a really popular street with lots of restaurants. And we were sitting there joking, having fun, talking about all our bad dating experiences, drinking wine, talking about how we needed a good psychic and it hadn't come. We walked back to our car, which was extremely like it was in a giant parking garage with like 12 floors of um of cars. So I mean, it's giant. There's no way. What I'm trying to say is that there is no way that somebody knew that we parked where we parked. So when we get to our parked car, there is a card, a business card, like shoved into the passenger side of the seat that said angel readings on it. And we looked around and there was no other car that had this card that said angel readings. It was basically like to call a psychic. And we were just like, holy shit, like somehow we have been answered by the universe. Of course, I was already burnt out by going to bad psychics. So one of my girlfriends was like, okay, I'll go first. And she had the most amazing reading. And it was, angels, which felt more comfortable because angels are in the Bible and whatever. So I go to this woman finally, like after my two girlfriends had tried, and she was so accurate. I was fascinated by what she did. It felt very light, where I feel like I was taught that like psychic readings were very dark and scary, and and I had those experiences the first few times that I went. But this was like like this lady. I mean, if anything, I felt like she gave me so much. Like it wasn't even about the future predictions that she gave me. She just gave me hope and she gave me clarity. She explained to me like what happened, all these kind of things. And she predicted my husband like years before I met him. And she was accurate. And she was really the one that I was I asked her this question at the end of the reading and I was like, do you think I could do what you do? And which was a weird question because I was a fashion and beauty editor at the time. I like loved my work and I just thought I was going to keep climbing the ladder. And she told me, yeah, like she's like, yeah, you can. And she introduced me to some books and I studied those books and I trained myself and I started to have like my own awakening. But again, just this was totally part of my own spiritual journey. I think a lot of us end up in the work because of that. We're just like kind of following the rabbit hole. And I definitely got into intuition work because I was trying to be perfect, right? Like I basically was asking her if I could do what she did so that I would never make a mistake again. I was like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but so what you're saying is that I can get real good at predicting that I'll like never be able to get dumped again or like I can win that lottery ticket. Like that was in my head that was the carrot I was going after. And she was trying to guide me another way. I was like, no. Like this is like act, right? Like I'm gonna be perfect, right? That's what we're going for here. Yes, you're gonna be perfect, Nikki. So that was really the beginning of my studies. I was just like, I don't want to make a mistake again. I want to figure out if this guy I was dating is actually my soulmate, which is a lot of why people come to me in the beginning as well, like the very ego basic stuff, but it doesn't matter because that's what gets us into it. And I think we're just trying to figure out how this mechanism, which is our intuition, like how it actually works. Like when is it right? When is it wrong? What does it actually do? Can it really predict? Like can it go as far? It's like a little it's a technology that exists within us and we're really trying to figure out like what's its limitations and what are some of the things that it can do that we didn't know it could do. So that's a lot of what I was doing in the beginning. And at some point when you get into spiritual work and you do your healing process, I think the unfortunate after effect of that is that everything else in your life starts to feel materialistic and it starts to feel like it has no purpose. And I mean, I was writing articles about $4,000 handbags and I just got to the point that I was like, what am I doing with my life? And then I was living this whole other world where I was understanding past lives and healing, and it had helped me heal so much. I met my husband by that time, and I just had found some gold. But I was living in this other like world of like pushing articles on like, I would write articles on like where to find the best bikinis in Miami, or like, where to go to the best party. And it was just such, it was just so against what my inner world was looking like those days. So I basically, decided I wanted to do this. I left my writing career. I started working with my husband so that I could on the side start growing this like coaching business, is basically what I thought it was. And I started to see some clients. I started to teach. But what was sticking out the most was like my intuitive gifts. Like I didn't mean to do it on purpose, but people were like, what did you just do? And why did you know that? And why did you predict that? And how did you see that? So I had like no other choice but to kind of get into these readings. And when I wanted to grow my business, I kept asking the universe, like, what do I need to do? Like, and I kept pulling the same stupid card that said, it was saying the card was like mediumship and psychic or something. And I was like, fuck you. I am not going to start doing readings like professionally. Like, I am the daughter of a fucking doctor. Like, you are insane. Like, my Cuban, like my Spaniard family, those conquistadors, they're going to be so pissed at like at me, like going back to like these like ancient roots of like being a medicine, witchy woman. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, our family has progressed so much. Like, this is like, I can't do this. So it was like very ancestral. It was a very hard decision for me to do. But one thing I've always been very good at is I am trusting of the divine, and I obey the divine. So for better or for worse, like that rebellion feeling that I feel that people have told me like, oh, you're so rebellious, you do your own thing, you do what you want. It looks like that. It looks stubborn. It looks selfish, but it's actually me following the divine and trusting, even though I have had been made no promises. And even though it looks very
Mm.
weird. So I was being told to go that way as much as I did not want to. And actually, those are usually like the best moves, like when you don't want to go there, but you're being called to that. There's so much. Gives me goosebumps. There's just so much magic there. So I did not want to go there. I did not want to do readings. Make that very clear. And it changed my life. And it changed my life. And look at like all the people I've been able to teach. And so yeah, that's how it's happened. I'm just grateful.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I love, really listening to your soul and your heart. I know for me, like when I haven't done that, it feels painful, even if it looks better from the outside or makes more sense to other people. Like it hurts and it's tiring and it sucks. So sometimes the braver way to go is actually like more easeful for the soul, I think, even if on the outside, it takes a lot of strength to go against the current. Um, so I love your story. I have so many questions, but I want to make sure Rashida has a chance to
Oh
ask
no, go ahead.
too.
I picked up on the No, I picked up on that's what the book's about, but we're going to go into that in a minute. So ask your questions, Lauren, because I'm very curious now.
Okay, this is a slight shift of gears. So, Rashida and I are both moms, and something that's come up continuously between our conversations and through people we interviewed is this like big spiritual shift that comes with motherhood. And it might even be like a dharmic shift, like kind of brings us onto a different path. Um, so I know for both of us, like that's certainly been the case of like our world's really opening up and changing
Mhm.
course in a way. And I'd love to know for you, how has like motherhood impacted your career, your dharma, and your readings?
Yeah, I actually talk about that in the book, Rashida, just so you know too. There's some of that
Perfect.
there. So, my introduction to motherhood was a little different because I met my husband Benny, and he was a single dad to a 4-year-old daughter, Allie. So it was a package deal. Benny and I were never alone. It was always a threesome with Allie. And I knew that and Allie was I mean, it was not rainbows and butterflies by any means in the beginning, but the uh her coming in earlier than I expected was like one of the most important things in my career, because I met her when I was still working as a magazine editor. Benny lived in a home in like kind of the suburbs of Miami because he was raising a child, and it was a nice little neighborhood with a playground and everything. And I was living in the city because I was a city editor at the time, and I was commuting to be with Benny and Allie for dinner. Like they were living a very like child, mom, dad life, and I was still living like my single editor city life. But I would try to make it home. Like I would try to make it home to them for dinner. And I remember just doing that drive, and Miami is like any big city with like tons of traffic. And I just said like I can't, this is not going to work. Like I can't do this. And it wasn't, this is not going to work like this relationship. I was like, this is not going to work. My career, for the first time, I actually was like sacrificing my career, which was rare for me, because I was like, this child needs to like be able to go to sleep at the right time. Like she needs to have dinner. Like she needs a routine. And I'm like messing with that by coming, by showing up at 8 o'clock at night. So meeting Allie was actually the first thing that inspired me to work differently. And I was very grateful for that, because the business I have today is rooted in the inspiration of Allie.
Mhm.
We were able to move from Miami and move to like the country, and like not have to blink our eyes, because my business I mean, I can move to, you know, Asia or whatever if I wanted to, because of the way that I have built my business, and it's completely inspired by the children. Specifically Allie. So I made very hard decisions in the beginning when I met Allie. Was like, the first thing was I tried to find like writing work that was online. So I left my magazine job. I moved over, and I feel like they've inspired my work very much. I think there's been many times while I've been growing my business and raising three small children that I would blame them for like my lack of success. So I'd be like, "Oh, I'm not here, I'm not there because damn it, like I have to, I can only work during nap times, or I have to pick them up at 2 o'clock." Like what, every stage has its complications. Now I'm blaming Allie because she gets home at midnight and I want to sleep, because she's a teenager. So it's like she's 17 and I'm still like blaming the kids for like, my lack of whatever success, quote unquote. So it's really funny that never goes away. Not to make any young moms feel worse, but it just keeps there's always a different stage. And I have decided that I have nicknamed the kids when it comes to my work. If I'm ever having like a hard day with balancing mom and work stuff, I call them my speed bumps, because I want to speed through the world. I want to drive at 80 miles per hour, but I cannot, because I have three children that are my speed bumps, and they keep me at driving at a sane, you know, uh, whatever speed, maybe at the 40s, but they keep me safe. Like if I was driving around at 80 miles per hour all the time, I would just knock some shit over and cause major, destruction. And I'm funny. Like I couldn't just have one speed bump. I needed three of them. Like that's how reckless I can be sometimes. And that's how reckless my ego can be sometimes. So I'm so grateful for my speed bumps. They have always kept me
Mhm.
at the exact right speed in my career. And although I've been working as we speak today, I've been in this career for, um, I've been at it for about 10 years, probably a little bit longer than that. I'm kind of, it's like you start before you actually started your business, but it was about 10 or 12 years. And I'm so grateful for where I am. Of course, I'm always like looking for more bigger and better things. And I know that my speed has been because I have prioritized my family.
Mhm.
And sure, could I have been other places? Of course. I was an editor at the age of 20. I mean, I was working for publications like Condé Nast at 20. I'm sorry, not 20, excuse me, at the age of 30. So I'm 41 now. I mean, I look at a lot of my friends who have like really big careers right now, but I am so proud of my family and like the balance that we have and all that. So they have humbled me, and they in many ways have taught me to like do things right, I would say. So so yeah, but in the book I talk about death. I think after every pregnancy, or after every child, you die. And you have to reinvent yourself, which is always. And I think what's interesting is as they go through their transitions. So I have Allie is going to be a senior, and Oliver is going to go into fifth grade. My little one's about to go into kinder. So we're in big transitions right now because she's going to go into college, and Oliver will go into middle school in a year. And as they go into transitions, I find the death coming again, because you are in many ways like that, as they transition, you are transitioning, whether you like it or not, as a mother. So then you have to you have to find yourself again. Like, okay, I'm not a mom of a toddler anymore. I'm not a mom of a baby anymore. Like, what am I? So I find it's a little hard because you feel out of control because you really are on like their pace.
Mhm.
Um, but in a weird way, kind of like, when you live with a bunch of women and your periods all sync up, in a weird way, your death starts to sync up with your children's transitions. And I think just the more you're aware of it, the easier and the more fruitful it could be.
Mhm. That's so good.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that and putting it in that way. I know for me, very much the same. A lot of fire and like a lot of speed, especially once I knew like my purpose and what I want to do in the world. And my daughter has slowed me down a lot, but I've become a lot more consistent and steady. And I have this great great love and responsibility in my life that I didn't understand before and hadn't yet experienced in this lifetime. And it really like informs the work and how I want to work and when I want to work. And it really like reprioritizes everything. And I like how you put that about the deaths and the transitions, because it almost feels like that in every moment. Like my daughter's 2.5, so the transitions are like, they happen really fast when they're a
Super
baby.
fast.
It's like there's always something new. And Rashida and I have talked about this a lot, of that, like that feeling when you're truly present with your kids. It's just really overwhelming because of the amount of love, because of the grief for the past, and like the hope for the future. And it's just man, it's everything all at once. And I think that can especially in like a soul-led life or spiritual life, it can really inform and feed the work so we can channel it into something even more meaningful and beautiful. So yeah, thank you
Rashida,
for
you have
sharing all
young
that.
children. Sorry,
Yeah, I have
mhm.
a 4-year-old, and Miles is now 10 months. So
That's right. I
very,
remember seeing him in class.
yeah. Yes, you
And
would. Jo-
both of you are like trying to are also like, I mean, you're obviously actively growing the podcast and actively growing like your own work as well. Is that
Mm.
How does that feel? Is that hard or easy?
Um, I would say for me, it's a little hard. I would say my children. So Macy came into my life to like really get me to just stop going through the motions and like really look at my dharma. And so she's my dharma baby. And Miles, I feel like, has come into my life to just shake things up so I can get really clear on what it is I really want to do. Because I'm a manifesting generator and I like a whole bunch of things all at the same time. But it's been a little difficult having a second one. And, Lauren and I, we speak very honest about motherhood on here. Very difficult because, having two of them at two different stages, trying to do what I want to do, I have to realize that it's not just about me too, and how I want to incorporate them into what I'm doing. I do this for them, but also, it's one of those things. They have their own lives too, and I have to like respect their boundaries and what they need and their wants as well. So it's really been humbling in a way to have two kiddos at the same time. But also it's given me like some clarity, like, okay, I don't have all the time in the world anymore. I can't just like wake up whenever I want to and do whatever I want to. So what is it that I really want to do? Where do I want to spend my time? Because the time that I have with my kiddos is important. What is it that I really want to do, and how can I make that streamline, I guess. Thank you for asking that, Nikki.
And Lauren?
Yeah, for me, so I owned multiple yoga studios and had a yoga festival and led international retreats and had a good thing going with delegation. And I was like, okay, I finally feel like I'm in the place to have a baby now and to bring one in. Um, I had her at 36. Well, I got pregnant in March of 2020 and the world shut down. And so it's like I got pregnant and then I had to totally shift my business to an online model. Um, and then, yeah, like Rashida said, just
Yeah.
everything changes, and you don't know, or, although we had like a soul relationship, I think before she was born, I didn't realize the extent of attachment she would need with me. Like, she's not the kid that you put down for a nap, like, never has been. She's not the kid who sleeps through the night. She's not the kid who will take a bottle. She's not the kid who will like let anyone else but me take care of her, essentially. So I've had to reprioritize. I still have one studio and I teach like once a week and lead our teacher training because that's really a big part of what I love to do. And it's important for our studio's income as well. Um, but yeah, really moving into more online work. And uh, Rashida and I met through a coaching training. That's how we even met. And I wanted to do that because I'm like, okay, this is a way to do my work that I can be like remote and I don't have to be like physically moving my body all the time. And that's what really led me into like and both of us into the intuitive work as well. So
Mhm.
I think like, yeah, the shift of motherhood, it reprioritized everything for me. And then it being during a pandemic just totally also changed things, like it changed everything for everybody. But I'm super grateful for the direction both of those things brought my life into. And now I'm connected with people all over the world. And actually, I wrote a book last year while Gemma was one, and it's being published at the end of this year. So I don't know. I think that everything has happened the way it's supposed to. And like Rashida said, like, okay, I have this amount of time. Like, how do I use it most potently? And maybe some days that's I take a nap, but other days it's like, most days it's like, okay, what are my most important projects right now? What can I delegate out to other people? And what can I just like what ball can I drop and not care?
Because the balls will drop.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it's so
I
nice
love
having a
that.
partner who understands because
It's helpful.
we are flexible with Rashida and I are very flexible with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, it's a hard stage. It's such a downshift from
Mhm.
like where you were, and then you move into this like new stage, and they are really like directing a lot of like it's like when you realize that like you're not on the soul path by yourself, you have these other souls that you have to um that you are partly in charge of helping them live into their purpose as well. So you're kind of like having to set the stage correctly and take whatever medicine they have brought you as well. So to kind of not be, I think you were saying that, Rashida, like almost like humbling into whatever they are bringing into your life and what you need to like learn or become based off like their influence. But yeah, I was
Yes.
very hard on myself the first few years. I was so afraid of losing myself when I was dying. I wrote a book also when Oliver was like 6 months old, and then Ethan when he was about 9 months old. I came out with the final swipe, and I was like holding on for dear life by when I wrote those, because I was really trying to not lose myself. I was afraid of um, the death and who I was becoming. So I was like holding on to like old parts. I like overworked myself a little bit sometimes too, because I didn't want this to mean that like my dreams were not going to happen. And I was really trying to fight for those dreams. And I don't know if I would have done it any other way. Looking back, I think that you're like in such a survival mode, at that point. I definitely was much better the second time around when I had the second baby. I think everybody should have a second baby. And Lauren, my Oliver was just like your Gemma. And I would say like the medicine to that is give them a freaking sibling. Like they get a sibling and like they're like, damn it, what happened here? Like this like 24-hour chest to chest is party is over. So I would say and Oliver has like now that he's 10, he's like very aware of it and like cracks him. He's like, oh, this guy. Like he's always making fun of his little brother. He's like, this guy is here again. And I'm like, yes, he's here. So that's always it's so fun to see them get older and be siblings and everything. But I just want to say if there's any young moms out there like fighting for themselves during these seasons, it is a season. And there is like you are doing such a great job. Like there is no secret medicine or a secret prescription for it to be like seamless. Like it is supposed to feel chaotic and discombobulating because you are dying. And some of our deaths, even depending on what kind of birth we had and all that stuff, will be longer. So it's like you are the walking dead for a couple years. You are not
I feel like it.
yourself. Yeah, you are like literally a cocoon walking around trying to function as the caterpillar or, being expectant of the butterfly, and you're not. And the butterfly comes like when you least expect it. So, what I would say is like it was helpful for me at some point to realize like that I was dying. And then, yeah, sometime around Ethan, my second, like right after is when I started to move into my butterfly stage, when soul teachers started to come my way, which was the original soul reading method. And I was like having a bit of that glow up. But I am so grateful that I never gave up on myself, even though it was messy and it was like small things and it was crazy and I was driving myself nuts and it was chaotic and I was blaming myself for not being where I thought I should have been. I'm still grateful for her for that version of myself because I think the other flip to that is to not try and then wake up one day, 10 years later and be like, oh, now I want to try. And that is very hard to like pick up after 10 years of like not believing in yourself and then having to then start to believe in yourself 10 years later is very difficult. So I would say that even those like little things that you're doing in these early stages are showing that you're worth it, that you have your own back, that you believe in yourself and that you're still worth the investment. And actually that at some point when the time is right, it does add up.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I want to say too, thank you for keeping it real, like saying that it's hard. The space is hard. Being a mom is hard. You know, really like trying to do what you want to do, get your foot in the ground, and really thank you, Nikki, for saying it. It's going to take a couple of years because I think sometimes when we look out, we're always looking out, social media, TV, whatever. It looks like people have it together, and I don't think it's talked about enough just how hard being a new mom is. Now I want to say more of it is coming out, but I remember before, you're just like, what's wrong with me? What am I not doing? Why don't I have it together? What is going on? So I really appreciate you, making a point to like really say like, you're fine. We're doing good. It's all good and we'll make it. And then to your point too, not giving up on yourself. It's really huge. And I would say, Macy was my catalyst for like really looking at where I'm going, my dharma and what I want to do. But, like you said, trying to pick something up after 10 years of not like rooting for yourself. Every day we do have to like, even when it's hard, like decide, because we have these people that are looking at us. We have these little people that are like, we're their everything. And we are, that's how they feel about us. We're their everything. And if they see us like giving up on ourselves, not doing the thing or even trying to do the thing, that's what we're teaching them. We're not physically saying it, but it's communicating our energy and our body. But, Lauren, for you, when you're every day, you're showing up and you're doing the thing, that's what Gemma sees, right? So I really appreciate that, Nikki. I really appreciate
It's
you
completely
speaking to
showing
that.
up, Rashida. Like that is the word. Like people are always like, "How did you get to where you are? Do what you do." And it's so simple. It's like you show up a little bit every day, and
Mhm.
that's like the best you can do.
I think, like, that's, like, the best advice ever, and it's funny you were talking about wanting to learn the intuitive arts to, like, become perfect at a certain point, but showing up, like, it absolutely requires you to throw that out the window. Like, you're not going to show up perfectly every day, and especially as women, like, we're gonna show up differently every day. We're on a lunar cycle. So do you have the bravery to do it? Are you able to be vulnerable enough to show up how you need to? And to I think, like, it's such a beautiful thing to let our kids in on that too, because not that my parents tried showing up perfectly, but in my mind, they were like gods when I was a kid. Like, it took me a while to, like, see them as humans, you know? And I want my daughter to feel safe, but I also want her to see what it looks like to just show up every day and to be okay with whatever that looks like. Rashida and I have
Yeah.
talked about this too, in that, like, discernment between, like, making yourself show up every day and, like, allowing for rest when it's needed, and how to, like, navigate that whole thing too.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I think showing up means showing up for yourself. And I
mm,
think that showing up for yourself is not necessarily showing up on social media, let's say. Showing up for
yes.
yourself can be like, I need rest today. Showing up for
Yep.
myself is canceling appointments when like that feels like the scariest thing to do, that like showing up for yourself is really
Mhm,
and showing up for yourself might be like, I need a year off completely from my career. So I think that when we and it's hard because it's not black and white. So I learned this a lot actually from my mom, because my mom um, was a very intelligent woman. Could have been a wanted to be a doctor, but decided that her husband was going to be a doctor and that she was going to take care of the kids. Was And at the time, those were the options, right? It was so hard for mothers in the 80s and the 90s to do what we're doing. Like, thank God for technology, right? To be able to do what we do. So I have so much compassion for that. But she like in her case, like she wanted to stay home with her kids, but the where she didn't show up for herself was, like, to say, like, that is okay. Like, it's okay to decide
Mhm.
to not have a career. Like, it is okay to dedicate your life to those kids. So, actually, like, showing up, being that doctor or whatever, like, might look like it's showing up because it's actually, like, standing up and, like, you're going out and you're doing something. But the true showing up for her, would have been to acknowledge, like, what the choice she is making and why it's the best choice for her. So I think
mm,
that that is the significance of showing up, because you can go 10 years without showing up for yourself, want to like start showing up for yourself, and it's very hard because you have ignored yourself for 10 years. And
Yeah.
ignoring ourselves can look, it's not black and white. It could look many different ways. Like, ignoring myself could be like, I did stay home with my kids when I really wanted to do XYZ. Like, that could actually be ignoring myself. And the flip of that could be ignoring myself. So we have to find, and that's why I'm such an advocate for soul readings, because I think that's a time to have time with your soul. I think your soul is the only one that really knows the path. I think our work is to find what our soul path really is, because it looks very different, and that is like the true compass. Like, we can't look at what everybody else is doing. Sometimes some of it works, sometimes you get a tip from your friend and that was very helpful and it's exactly what you needed. But sometimes, like, comparing ourselves is the worst thing that we can do for ourselves. So our work is really to
mhm,
find out, what is my soul led life? Like, what is um my way? What is my path? And I think going back to intuition is that GPS. It's the GPS system. It's the compass, which is why I think it's so important to grow the intuition. So I guess it's not about being perfect. It's about really finding what is true for you.
mm.
Yes,
So
I love how you said the grow your intuition, which is so true. We all have it, but it's in different stages, and I think it's about the trust as well, Nikki. Because I know when I was going through training, Lauren was in it with me, and I'd be like, Lauren, I'm getting this, or I'm not getting that, and I don't know what this mean, what this doesn't mean. And Lauren's like, girl, what's coming through? So so trust it. And you just have to like discern. And it's the same thing, like, even if you're not doing a reading per se, but like really trusting that intuition, it's so important. And it's something we all have. But I think sometimes as we've grown up, we've learned to like, we've been taught not to like really listen to it, to really put like trust and faith in someone else, things outside of ourselves, but having that like trust within, it's so important. So like really growing that intuition and growing that trust and having that trust in yourself is so important.
Yeah, I wanted to go off of that. And Nikki, I was just going to say, I'm going to take a moment to like hype soul reading method before we dive more deeply into your book, just because I know Rashida and I had such a wonderful experience in it. And I think for those of us who like feel the call of intuition or maybe like suspect we might be more intuitive, we can live a soul-led life and follow the gut or heart intuition, whatever you want to call it, and then we wait to see the results. But in your method and with this like coven of people that we get to be with, we get to like get real-time feedback for intuition. And to me, like that was probably the most valuable part of the experience, apart from having the language and methodology to use to like be able to wield the tool of intuition. Um, and we get to like show people on our podcast too, like this real feedback that we're getting. Like this symbol comes up, and the person is like, "Oh my God, that's a very meaningful symbol to me, and this is why." Um, to have that like concentrated space to practice in that way is just super mind blowing. And even still, every time like my jaw drops and I get chills when somebody shares something with me that's like confirmation for what's coming through. And yeah, I think just that like that concentrated time with a group of open minded people who all have the same goal just takes that takes your practice to a whole new level really, really quickly because you have that immediate feedback.
Yeah.
What about you, Rashida? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely agree. It's like one of those things, even when you decide, oh, I'm not going to share what came through because I'm sure that that is very off. And then people start talking, you're like, what? What? That happened? So, yeah, I would definitely agree. Having that real time feedback, being together, and like really just one, not being afraid to like openly just say whatever came through, but also like having the people as well. And it comes in different things, like even on the pod when we do our readings, like Lauren, you'll say something one way and I'll say it the other way, but it's almost like the same meaning. And having that confirmation is just really amazing. And it really, every time we do it, I'm just like, man, this thing is legit. Like this is real. This is real stuff. This is real stuff.
I'm just like, that's literally like I remember when I was testing out the concept with my one of my first students, Angelica Ray, who I love. She was like, Nikki, this like really works. And I was like, yeah, it works. It's like weird, but it works. But yeah, it's interesting. I think, I got so much more than being perfect when I studied intuition. And I know, and I see you guys getting so much more than being perfect by studying intuition. And there's so many things that happen. Number one, I think you become amazed and curious about what else can the human do. I think it's like fascinating to be like, holy crap, like we can do this. And it really opens up
Right.
the world to you because you're like, okay, like, yeah, we know like there's so much we know, but there's so much we don't know because like look at this cool trick that I just learned. So I think it just gives you so much it opens your mind, which we all need to open our minds. The world would be a better place if we were more open minded. So I think it's so healing to be in group with strangers, majority women, which is usually a competitive place for us. Where we start to compete and doubt ourselves and stuff like that. But to be in this space where we are all connecting to our souls and connecting is so healing. So that has been one of my greatest prides of the program to see like you just get to hang out with people at a soul level for just a little bit, and maybe off the program you might not really like each other, but like in the program you're there working and you're like, man, like you just get in that zone. And I think the other thing that was fascinating about practicing your intuition is that I think typically when you think about practicing your intuition, you're like, I have to do this on my own. I have to be right. I need to figure out this out on my own. And I studied my intuition by myself for a long time, but everything changed for me one day when I hired this assistant for my husband's company, and we would sit next to each other, her and I would work a little bit on my business and a little bit on his business and help her out on whatever she was doing. And out of nowhere, she started talking to me about Archangel Michael, which I think is like code word for like metaphysical people. You're like, Archangel Michael, yes, I know him. Like when she the minute she said Archangel Michael, I'm like, we can be friends. And we got into like tarot cards together, and we started practicing together. And I had been practicing on my own for like maybe 3 years, and the growth that I had from practicing with her, and she wasn't teaching me anything new. It was just that it was the validation, and the practicing together. I skyrocketed like within 6 months, and that's when I realized that intuition is best done in group. Like it's actually not a private practice. Like you're supposed to do it with other people. And I think that is definitely what's very special about the soul reading method, that you get like that validation and all those things. And that's where you get the confidence. And then at the end of the day, when you work your intuition, I think one of the greatest gifts that you get is self-trust. Like you really
Mhm.
learn to bet on
Mhm.
yourself. Like you really learn to like let yourself be a little crazy. You really let yourself, because you're studying it, you can't help but to watch your decisions and see what happens once you make that decision. You're like, oh yeah, I did that thing, and like it actually worked out. Like because you're basically trying to figure out your intuition. You're looking back, so you actually like learn to hack yourself. You learn to understand, like when I'm in my ego, when I'm like in my anxiety, when I'm actually in my intuition. So it's a beautiful gift you can give to yourself, because you have this like mechanism that you just didn't know how it worked, and now it's working well. So I love that you guys and I didn't get the fun groups like you did. So I always feel like my wound of like studying on my own created like the community in many ways, because I was like all on my own, afraid to come out of the closet. And some days I see you guys, I'm like, I just want to be there in the party. And I was
Mm.
the first round and the second round, I was very when they were soul teacher, I was like very involved, because I was like the girl that didn't go to prom and just like kept showing up to prom,
You're reading.
even though I was like 10 years older, you know?
That's awesome.
I love that so much. Yeah, I have so much love for the program and for you, Nikki, for being brave enough to like put it together and put it out and doing all the work for us. We do have the work, but just the way in which like Lauren said, the language, what to do, the technique. I mean, I could never have imagined doing anything like that without having that framework. So I really appreciate you for
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, and then I love that you
So
guys can like run from there. Like use that framework
Mhm.
and then like go off into whatever calls you after that.
absolutely. And you made that very clear. You said, "This is what I do." And then you do what you feels good to you, which is amazing. I think sometimes we're taught, this is what you do and this is how you have to do it. And we get so much resistance around that because that's just not our way. So having that permission to like really just roll with however it comes to us
Yeah.
is amazing. But Nikki, I would love to know. Oh, Lauren, do you have a question? No,
No?
I would love to know more about your book. If you can let us know what it's going to called.
Yeah. So I've been writing for the last year, Soul Led Living, my third
Mhm.
book. And it's really about finding your true path and having the bravery to follow it. So it's like a lot of what we've talked about, like how does one follow what's like really in their heart? What's really in my heart? Like what is my soul's true path? So that's really the first thing we start to work through the book. Like what is that? How can we find it without having a reading, or without having to do what we do? And then how do we actually become brave enough to live that way, to follow it? And for me, one of the biggest moves I had recently was I moved from Miami, which is where I grew up, and my Cuban culture and my family's there. Moved to the country with 30 acres of land and a farm and all that. So there's a lot of those stories of like how I was actually able to get there. I talk a lot about being off path. So my husband was very sick, in an addiction problem. We were going to get divorced. Everything looked like it was like falling apart, and it was just symptoms of being misaligned, being off path, and how I was able to surrender that and rework it, and by miracle, come back to where we are. So it's a lot of like how you can find yourself off path. And for many people, the feeling off path is not like traumatic. It's not this crisis. It's just like, something. I feel like life should be bigger. I feel like life should be more exciting. I feel like there should be more for me. And that's really what the book is for. It's like the person that is like, I did all the things. I checked everything off the list. I had the baby. I got married. I got the house. I even adopted the dog. And there's still something that's like not working. And that is because we are following the blueprints of others rather than our true path. So
Mm.
this book is like speaking to that person, like, you are not crazy. There is something missing. And like, this is what it is. It's within you. And it's going to be different for everybody. But you are correct. There is something off. And it's because your soul is off path. What is your soul's true path? And that could be living in a high rise in New York City, or that could be like living in the country with all these damn farm animals, like whatever that may be. It's different for everybody. It could be working a corporate job, or it could be running your own business. Like, it's really, I'm such an advocate for, like, it is not, I think the horrible thing that sometimes social media has done to us is to think is that there is a black and white, that there is a formula, and it's just another formula for like the formulas we've been given our whole lives, right? Like, many of us have been following like the American dream, which is just a formula. And now that American dream is not working for us, for many of us. And so then we start to look for like other formulas, and then those don't work for us, and all that kind of stuff. So this is really the solution to many years of maybe following other people's blueprints, feeling like something is a little off, and feeling that there might be more of an authentic path for you. That's what soul led living is about. And it's a mix of uh, really beautiful written stories, and lots of techniques and tips and like how to's as well. So meditations, all sorts of stuff. So it's a really beautiful journey. I went through a lot writing it, so I know the medicine in it is going to be very potent. So watch out when you read the book, because I learned that with soul reading method. I was like, oh, holy shit! Like, you can actually leave medicine and energy in the things that you create. So I'm excited to birth that baby out into the world. So I'm having my launch event on my birthday, July 21st, in Miami. So coming home to show what I've made while I've been gone. So, because I've been writing this since I've moved from Miami. So it's nice to come home and bring it back to the village.
That's
Mm.
amazing. Oh, I'm so excited. I cannot wait for that to come out, Nikki. And you are so true about, going through things and there being medicine left. I know Lauren had that experience too when she wrote her book as well.
And that book
Yeah,
has
I love
not been published yet, Lauren. So we haven't seen people taken. Yeah. Cause that's always an interesting, writing is so interesting, because you're like by yourself for a year going nuts, thinking like, is anybody even going to like this? Like, is this going to speak to anybody? Like, it's one of the, because we're talking about validation in the program, right? Like, you get instant validation. Even when you write a blog post or an Instagram post, you get some instant validation. But with a book, you get like no validation other than the editor, who's supposed to tell you that it's a decent book anyways, because they're already in there with you. And they're, so close to it. So when you release a book, it's always interesting to see. And I think what's interesting about a book or any sort of program or medicine that you make, I've been a creator for for so long, that what you think is going to resonate ends up being so different than like actually what does resonate and stick out to people. So so I wonder, Lauren, if you like, I'm excited to see you see that experience, because you like put it out, and then I think you'll probably be surprised by like what really stood out to people that might be a little different than what like you thought was going to stand out to people. And I'm interested in seeing that with soul led living, like what's really speaking to people, and what might be different than what I thought would be speaking to people.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I did run like a test group this past fall. So I took, because my book is like, ideally you do a section every day and it takes like 7 weeks, which is a pretty intense format for a book. But yeah, it was interesting to see. And like sometimes the parts that were hardest for me to write are just like no big deal for somebody else to read. I think it was just stuff like I needed to personally process, and then
Yeah.
something that was just kind of channeled through that I didn't even like, I don't know, maybe I read to edit it, but didn't, I don't know. It's not like a heavy part of my story. That's what resonates the most. It's just hard to say, but I'm definitely looking forward to the process, especially like with traditional publishing, it takes so long. So I wrote this, over a year ago, and now I'm just kind of waiting because it's going to be November when
Yeah.
it comes out, and telling people about it now and stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting process. I'd love to know like about if you have time, a little bit about your writing process, like how do your books come to you, and then how do you birth them? Do you come up with like a strong outline and then flow from there, or how does it go?
Yeah, I would say that like children, they're all different. So I would say I've written three, and the first one does not exist anymore because it's such a bad book. I love the idea of writing a bad book before you can like actually. So I needed to write like a really bad book to be able to get to writing a good book. And so I would say the process is a little different depending on the topic. I wrote two dating books before, so a little less personal for me. And I started off with definitely with an outline and then was able to follow the outline. This book gave me a very hard time. It's like that child that you're like, you are giving me a hard time. That's basically what this book did to me. I tried to write in order. I tried to write in an outline, and it did. It's such a rebel. This book because it's about following your own path, so it's not
Yeah.
linear. Literally. So it was like
Literally,
telling you like
yes.
we're not gonna be written that way. So I think if you are thinking about writing a book, do your best, of course, to write an outline and get some ideas and stuff like that. But every book has its own energy, really, and it has almost its own personality because it is something you are birthing. So it is not you; it's coming from you, but it has its own energy. So it will guide you. I think. So, what I learned for this book, what was helpful for me was to write stories rather than be concerned with any sort of order. And then after I wrote, I put it into order. So actually, some of the first chapters were some of the last things I wrote. And some of the stuff in the middle were like the very first things I wrote. So I thankfully, like I finally got to that place where I realized like, oh, this is not going to be written in order. So I focused on writing like almost like a elongated like blog post in a sense, like almost like, okay, I have this topic that I want to speak about, and go into that. It was hard because when you write self-help, like you want to, and because I've been making courses for so long, I have learned to like, bring people through a journey. And this book like did not want that. So that was a little, so we fought on this a lot. And it was interesting. So right, uh, I think like I guess right when my parents are moving out of their house, the house that we grew up in, and my dad's been randomly shipping me stuff like, things that I do not want. Like my high school boyfriend's underwear or something like shows up in my house randomly, shit like that, right? And he shipped me home a box of like my ski clothes. We went skiing like every spring break growing up as a kid. And my dad like thinking like she's in the cold now. Like she could use this skiing clothes. Like, and literally it was like from when I was 16, 15 or 16. I'm a 40-year-old grown ass woman. And my dad is like shipping me home like limited to, I don't know if you guys remember that store, and like wet
Oh yeah.
seal, like clothing. Like I can't even believe they
Yes.
still have this stuff. So, anyways, my dad ships me home this box, and in this box is this like, so a bunch of, this is hilarious, like a cardigan with like a goofy on it. I mean, like a Looney Tunes denim shirt. I mean, it was like amazing. It was like gold, like this '90s gear. But in that, he sends me this like fluorescent, like magenta, like fluorescent pink sweater, with like all these like fluorescent colors, like little ski boots. And it was so soft and it was so like worn in that I just like so happy that he sent it to me. And I actually wrote in that sweater every single time I wrote. For some reason, I would always, that was like my writing gear. And I would wear that. And I realized with time that the book had a lot of energy of that like teenage swagger. Like this sweater was mine from when I was a teenager. And as a teenager, my daughter is like that. She's 17, and there's a part of her that just has like, she knows everything. She's smarter than everybody. Like these people are assholes, like whatever. That's the way she goes through life. And it was interesting that they would make fun of me and they would be like, why are you, my family would be like, why are you wearing that sweater? I'm like, I don't know. It's really comfortable. And it's like, it helps me write. So, as a writer, you do get ritualistic. Like you end up sitting in the same place, you write, you wear the same clothes, you drink the same thing that you drink. Like you just feel that you need these like superpowers to be able to do what you're about to do. And that just became part of my ritual. And I really believe that the reason I was like wearing that was because there was like an energy in that I was reaching in to that, the most beautiful parts of like my teenage self that really was realizing that like wanted to live her own path.
Mm.
So like the energy of the book is really about that. And she's very rebellious. And there was just certain things I could not do that I could have done with other books. So I would say if you are writing, it does take a little bit of time to get into that. Like it was like, by the fourth time that I was writing, I realized I was wearing the sweater. I was drinking the matcha. I was like, doing these things over and over again. And I got into like a groove, and I finally got okay with just like writing what I was being called to write that day. So then I would write a full chapter. I would send it over to my assistant, Kat, who's amazing. And she's a lover of my work and like a student of like our world. And she would read and she would question me like a curious person, because you, as a writer, you're going to write a shitty first draft and you want to go into depth. And I wanted to go into the depths of like what I had. So Kat would question me. I would then, I would respond in the writing, like writing back to her until we felt it was good enough. And then once that was good enough, it went off to the editor. And then my editor had another, but by the time I got to my editor, it was in pretty good shape. And then she would develop it a little bit further with just some ideas. We would finish that out. And then the last person who sees it is Marisa, who's one of my good friends from growing up, as my proofreader. And she's just making my writing look even better. So that is kind of how that's how I worked.
Well, that's so
I love
exciting.
that.
Yeah. I can't wait to read it. I was kind of cracking up because during my process, my parents gave me maybe 3 or 4 like Tupperware bins of like childhood stuff.
Oh,
And
weird. It's
like,
like you're digging up all your
Yeah.
yeah,
childhood stuff and they like feel it.
yeah. Yeah, and it was like confirming stories too that were coming up, and it was definitely really interesting. So it's so funny that you said that. Nikki, I know you got to go soon. So besides ordering your book, which everyone stop right now and do it, and soul reading method, what are other ways to connect with you and work with you?
Yeah. So if you guys are interested in reading the first chapter, I'd love to give you for free. It's at nikkinovo.com/free chapter. So you can check out like the first, and I would say it's very juicy, the first chapter. And I'm always on Instagram. So if you want to just like meet me there, I would love that. And yeah, you'll find all my programs. We have different levels of intuition programs. Like soul reading method is definitely like, the most involved, but we have like really inexpensive, like first level ones as well. And just come and say hi to me. I would love to like see you sliding into my DMs. And I can't wait to see how you enjoy the book. And I'm just really grateful for both of you for having me on the show.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you for being here. We definitely appreciate you taking the time and being here and the energy with us and sharing your new baby that's about to come out. Really excited to take a look at that. And also, thank you for letting us read the first chapter.
Yeah.
This pretty cool.
Yeah. You're welcome. The best part of a book baby is that it'll sleep through the night. I don't have to wake up and feed it, Rashida.
We do not have to talk about sleeping through the night because I know Lauren still isn't, but I'm not either. So. Well, Nikki, we do have one more question for you before you go. Will you be our bestie?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. We're so excited. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and talking intuition and motherhood with us. We really appreciate hearing it from all different perspectives. And Lauren, as always, thank you so much for the awesome questions and guiding us through this conversation. Really, really appreciate you and love you. And I hope you all and our listeners have a great day. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thank you, Nikki. Thanks, Rashida. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us for this incredible episode. If you loved it, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and tell all your besties about us.
You can also connect with us on Instagram at Your Spiritual Besties Podcast. And be sure to say hello and share your thoughts about the episode. Love you, bestie. Talk soon.